That was the limit. With a slow, deliberate movement, the cleaner reached into her apron pocket. The chief of police, still fuming, prepared for another insult, but his voice died in his throat. Before his eyes, she raised a laminated ID badge, the Republic's emblem gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "I am Federal Judge Helena Vasconcelos," she declared, her voice now firm and sharp as steel. "And you, Chief Almeida, are under arrest for abuse of authority." The chief's face, previously red with fury, instantly paled, turning a cadaverous white of pure terror as the entire police station stopped to witness the fall of the untouchable. The air in the police station, previously heavy with the smell of spilled coffee and the chief's rage, became thin, almost unbreathable. The silence that followed Helena's declaration wasn't just the absence of sound. It was a vacuum, a black hole, swallowing any semblance of normality. The officers, formerly mere spectators of the humiliation, were now silent witnesses to a seismic event, their eyes wide, fixed on the badge gleaming in the cleaner's hand. Chief Almeida, a man who just seconds ago saw himself as an untouchable god in his small empire, was now paralyzed. His face, once a canvas of arrogance and contempt, was a map of disbelief and panic. Color drained from his features, leaving him pale as a ghost. His lips trembled, trying to form words, but no sound escaped. It was as if his voice, his power, had been forcibly ripped from him. Helena, on the other hand, seemed transformed. The stooped posture, the submissive gaze, the coffee-stained blouse, all vanished beneath the aura of authority emanating from her. Her eyes, previously veiled, now shone with cold, unshakable determination. She was no longer the cleaner. She was Federal Judge Helena Vasconcelos, and the entire police station felt the weight of her presence. "Chief Almeida," her voice echoed stronger now, filling the void of silence, "you are being detained for abuse of authority, illegal coercion, and improper use of your position to humiliate and intimidate a citizen. The evidence is clear and the witnesses numerous." She made a subtle gesture with her head, indicating the surrounding officers, who flinched slightly, as if the mention made them accomplices. Almeida finally found his voice, but it was a hoarse, almost inaudible rasp. This is a mistake, a bad joke. You're the cleaner. I didn't do anything." He tried to force a laugh, but the sound was hollow and desperate. His eyes swept the room, seeking support, but found only averted gazes and petrified faces. No one dared to intervene. No one even dared to breathe loudly. Helena took a step forward, closing the distance between them. "A mistake, Chief. You humiliated me, called me nothing, forced me to clean the floor with my own clothes under threat. All this because I was undercover, observing conduct in this place, and what I found was exactly what I expected: an officer who abuses his power and disrespects the law he swore to protect." She put the badge back in her pocket, a gesture that, paradoxically, enhanced her authority. "Captain Silva," she called, addressing the most senior officer present, a middle-aged man whose eyes had been fixed on the floor. "Please get the handcuffs. Chief Almeida will be taken to the Federal Police Headquarters to give a statement and await due process." Captain Silva hesitated for a millisecond, a visible conflict on his face. Obey the man who had terrorized him for years, or the federal judge who had just unmasked him? The choice, though difficult, was obvious. With a heavy sigh, he moved, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He took the handcuffs from his belt, his eyes still avoiding Almeida's. "No, you can't do this. I am the chief here. I am the authority." Almeida shrieked, his voice rising to a hysterical pitch. He tried to step back, but his feet seemed glued to the floor. The terror in his eyes was palpable, a terror he never imagined feeling. The nothing he had humiliated was now dismantling his life, his career, his reputation. Helena watched the scene with chilling calm. "Your authority, Chief, has just been revoked. and the law, which you so despised, will now turn against you." When Captain Silva approached, Almeida tried to resist, pushing the captain with his arms, but it was a weak, desperate gesture. Two other officers, emboldened by Helena's determination and their former chief's weakness, moved in to assist the captain. In a matter of seconds, the cold handcuffs were fastened to Almeida's wrists, the metallic click resonating like a final verdict. The chief, now handcuffed, seemed to shrink. The fury on his face gave way to a mixture of shame and despair. He was overwhelmed, not by physical force, but by the force of the law he thought he was above. Helena watched him being led out of the police station, her eyes fixed on the coffee stain on the floor, a silent reminder of the humiliation he had tried to inflict. The police station, once a stage for Almeida's tyranny, was now a place of reflection and shock. The fall of the untouchable had been spectacular, and the judge's rise, a brutal reminder that justice sometimes disguises itself to see the truth. The day had barely begun, but order had been restored, and the cleanup, in a much deeper way than spilled coffee, was just beginning. The metallic echo of Almeida's handcuffs faded, taking with it not only the chief, but also the illusion of impunity that hung over that police station. The silence that followed was no longer a vacuum, but an oppressive weight, a dense fog of shock and uncertainty. The officer's eyes, previously fixed on the exit where Almeida had been dragged, now turned to Helena, the woman who, minutes before, was just the cleaner. She remained there, in the center of the room, her blouse still stained with coffee, a stark symbol of the humiliation she had endured and the justice she had just imposed. Helena Vasconcelos showed no triumph. Her expression was serious, almost melancholic, as if victory came with a heavy cost. She swept her gaze across the room, finding pale faces and averted eyes. Many of the officers who had previously laughed at or ignored Almeida's cruelties now seemed small, shrunken under the weight of their own consciences. Captain Silva, still holding the empty handcuffs in one hand, seemed to have aged 10 years in a matter of minutes. "Captain Silva." Helena's voice cut through the silence again, but this time, without the urgency of the arrest, it was more measured, more grave. "Please gather all officers present in the meeting room immediately." The order was clear, unquestionable. The captain, without a word, nodded, his body reacting out of pure instinct of obedience. He walked slowly, his gaze meeting that of other officers, a mixture of fear and resignation in their eyes. Almeida's authority had been an iron fist, Helena's, a sharp but silent sword that cut through complacency. As the officers shuffled towards the designated room, Helena picked up Almeida's communication radio, which had fallen to the floor during the commotion. With a precise gesture, she turned it on. "This is Federal Judge Helena Vasconcelos. I request the immediate presence of a Federal Police Internal Affairs team at this station. I repeat, Internal Affairs team urgent." Her voice echoed through the corridors, surprising even the few administrative staff still trying to process what had happened. The mention of internal affairs was a final blow, a warning that the cleanup would not be limited to a single man. It was an institutional earthquake, and its shockwaves were only just beginning to be felt. In the meeting room, the air was heavy. The officers sat in silence, avoiding eye contact, like students awaiting a severe scolding. The coffee stain on Helena's blouse, though insignificant in itself, seemed to grow, becoming an emblem of the rot she was there to expose. Helena stood before the table, her eyes scanning each face. "I am not here to judge each of you individually at this moment," she began, her voice calm, yet laden with unshakable authority. "My presence, disguised, was the result of numerous complaints about the conduct of this police station, about the abuse of power, corruption, and the way the law is treated by some of its members. Chief Almeida was merely the tip of the iceberg, a visible symbol of a much larger problem. A muffled murmur ran through the room, quickly silenced by Helena's penetrating gaze. The fear, previously focused on Almeida, now spread, affecting everyone. Almeida's arrest is just the beginning, and she continued. Internal affairs is on its way. Each of you will be interrogated. Every procedure, every ignored complaint, every act of omission or complicity will be thoroughly investigated. Those who cooperate, who show genuine remorse, and who are willing to help restore the integrity of this institution, will have the opportunity to do so. Those who choose the path of resistance or lies will face the most severe consequences of the law. Captain Silva, who was sitting in the front row, finally raised his head. His eyes, previously filled with fear, now showed a spark of something that seemed to be hope mixed with deep exhaustion. He had been a passive spectator for too long, a good man trapped in a bad system. Almeida's fall, as terrifying as it was, had liberated something within him, a chance for redemption. Captain, Helena addressed him, you will be responsible for ensuring order and cooperation from everyone until the internal affairs team arrives. No one leaves this police station without my permission. No document is altered. No file is deleted. Understood? Yes, Judge, the captain replied, his voice hoarse but firm. It was the first time he had spoken with such conviction in years. Helena's authority was unquestionable, and the promise of a cleanup, however painful, was also a promise of a more just future. Helena nodded, satisfied. Justice may be slow, but it always arrives, and sometimes it dresses as a cleaner to see the truth up close. She looked at the coffee stain on her blouse, an almost imperceptible smile appearing on her lips. The cleanup had begun, and it would be deep, painful, but necessary. The police station, once a den of tyranny, was about to be purified, a dark chapter closing so that a new and more just one could begin. The air, previously heavy, now seemed charged with a new and frightening promise of change. The air in the police station, previously heavy with revelation and the promise of change, now vibrated with a new and imminent threat. The tense silence in the meeting room was abruptly broken by the distant sound of sirens, rapidly approaching, growing in volume, until they became a deafening roar outside. It was the Federal Police Internal Affairs, arriving with the precision and gravity of a mobile court. Helena Vasconcelos observed the officers' faces. The fear in their eyes intensified, transforming resignation into latent panic. Captain Silva, however, seemed to breathe a little deeper, as if the arrival of external help, as frightening as it was, lifted an old weight from his shoulders. He knew hell was about to begin, but perhaps, just perhaps, it would be a purifying hell. Doors slammed open and shut outside. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors, and soon the entrance to the meeting room was filled by a team of internal affairs agents. They were men and women with serious expressions, impeccable uniforms, and an aura of unquestionable authority, unlike that flaunted by Almeida. At their head, a tall man with graying hair and a penetrating gaze swept the room. It was Federal Chief Ricardo Mendez, head of the investigation team. His eyes stopped on Helena, who was still standing, the coffee stain on her blouse serving as a strange emblem of her mission. Mendez, who had clearly already been informed of the situation, gave a brief, respectful nod. "Judge Vasconcelos," he said, his voice grave and formal. "Chief Mendez, at your service, we received your call." Helena nodded, her calm gaze contrasting with the brewing storm. "Chief Mendez, the situation is as reported. Chief Almeida has been detained and taken to headquarters. This police station is under immediate investigation for abuse of authority, corruption, and generalized misconduct. All present are witnesses and, potentially, subjects of investigation." Mendez wasted no time. With a quick gesture, he instructed his team. "Agent Silva, Agent Costa, begin sealing the offices and the archive room. No one enters or leaves. Agent Castro, collect all cell phones from the officers present. Agent Pereira, prepare the interrogation rooms. Captain Silva, he turned to the captain, who had stood up, you will be the first to testify. Please accompany Agent Pereira. Captain Silva hesitated for an instant, a last remnant of loyalty to the old system, fighting against the need to do what was right. But then he looked at Helena, at the coffee stain, at the silent determination in her eyes, and the choice became crystal clear. Yes, Chief, he replied, his voice firmer than he expected. He followed the agent, his footsteps echoing the decision of a man who finally chose a side. The meeting room transformed into a cauldron of anxiety. The officers, now deprived of their cell phones, their last lines of communication with the outside world, and possibly with accomplices, felt completely exposed. Nervous murmurs began to emerge, but were quickly stifled by the stern gazes of the internal affairs agents now patrolling the room. Helena remained in the center, observing the unfolding events. She knew Almeida's fall was just the first domino. The real battle would be to dismantle the network of complicity and silence that allowed his tyranny to flourish. Every face in the room was an untold story, a choice made, a secret kept, and internal affairs was there to unravel each one. Chief Mendez approached Helena. Judge, what else can we expect? Are there indications of something deeper? Helena looked at him, her eyes tired but firm. Chief, the way Almeida operated suggests a system of protection and omission. Complaints were filed away, evidence disappeared, and citizens were silenced. The coffee stain on my blouse is just a small sample of the dirt that has accumulated here. We need to go deep, to the root. No one is above the law, and impunity will not be tolerated. She paused, the weight of her words filling the space. Start with the archives of unprocessed complaints and the records of incidents with irregularities, and please ensure the safety of anyone who decides to cooperate. Fear is a powerful enemy, and many here have lived under it for too long. Mendez nodded, understanding the depth of the challenge. Understood, Judge. We will conduct a complete sweep. This police station will be cleaned from top to bottom. As interrogations began in adjacent rooms, and internal affairs agents moved methodically through the police station, sealing doors and collecting documents, the tension did not diminish. On the contrary, it transformed. The fear of the unknown replaced the fear of the known. Uncertainty about the future hung like a dark cloud over every officer. The life they knew, the routine, the hierarchies, everything was being dismantled before their eyes. Captain Silva, in the interrogation room, felt the weight of Agent Pereira's questions. Every detail, every omission, every act of cowardice or conformity he had buried in his conscience now came to the surface. At first, shame suffocated him, but as he spoke, a strange sense of relief began to emerge. It was as if, by confessing the rot, he was finally purifying himself. He didn't know what the future held for him, but the truth, however painful, seemed to be the only path. In the meeting room, Helena, still in her stained blouse, sat in one of the chairs, observing the controlled chaos. The cleanup had indeed begun. It wasn't just a matter of spilled coffee, but of years of institutional grime, corrupted power, and denied justice. And however painful the process, she knew it was the only way to restore faith in the law that she and all of them had sworn to protect. The police station, once a bastion of distorted authority, was now under the microscope of truth, and what would be revealed no one could predict. The silence of the night, which once harbored the secrets of that place, was now filled with the sounds of justice in action, a prelude to the storm that was yet to come. Night deepened over the police station, but it did not bring with it the usual veil of secrets and silence. Instead, the air vibrated with a tense energy, a constant hum of muffled voices, hurried footsteps, and the rustling of papers. The silence of the night, once complicit, was now broken by sounds that stripped bare the truth, revealing the rot hidden beneath the facade of order. In the interrogation rooms, Captain Silver continued his deposition. Each word was a brick removed from the wall of a mission he had helped build. The shame was palpable, but with each confession, a weight seemed to lift from his shoulders. He spoke of the pressure, the veiled threats, the small favors that turned into large debts. He mentioned the fear of Almeida, but also the indifference of many, the complicit silence that allowed tyranny to flourish. Agent Pereira, with his agile pen, recorded every detail, his eyes fixed on the captain, seeking not only the truth, but the motivation behind it. Meanwhile, in adjacent rooms, other officers awaited their turn, anxiety gnawing at them from within. Some tried to maintain their composure, others showed an almost palpable nervousness, hands sweating, gazes lost. The confiscation of cell phones had severed their last ties with the outside, with any hope of coordination or erasing tracks. They were isolated, exposed, and the reality of their situation began to sink in. The Internal Affairs team, led by Chief Mendez, moved with the precision of a scalpel. Offices were sealed, computers forensically examined, files overturned. There was no hiding place. The search was not just for isolated irregularities, but for a pattern, for a system. Agents in white gloves and cameras photographed every document, every suspicious object. The coffee stain on Helena's blouse, once a symbol of humiliation, now seemed like a beacon, illuminating the dirt the police station itself tried to hide. Helena, seated in the meeting room, observed the orchestration of justice. Her eyes, though tired, missed not a single movement. She knew Almeida's fall was just the tip of the iceberg. The real battle would be to unearth the network of complicity that protected him. Chief Mendez approached her again, a stack of documents in his hands. "Judge," he said, his voice low, "we found something in the incident reports, a series of complaints of extortion and assault, all filed away with the same justification, lack of evidence. But what's striking is that the victims were always from impoverished communities, and the alleged aggressors, people with political or business connections. And in all these cases, Chief Almeida was responsible for filing them away." Helena took the documents, leafing through them. Indignation bubbled, but she controlled it. "This confirms what we suspected, Chief. It wasn't just abuse of power out of whim, but a scheme. Almeida used his position to protect criminals and oppress the most vulnerable. Check the bank deposits of Almeida and his closest collaborators. Look for atypical movements, transfers of values incompatible with their salaries." Mendez nodded, already transmitting the new directives to his team. The investigation gained new layers, revealing the extent of the web of corruption. Elsewhere in the police station, Agent Silva, responsible for the archive room, made a discovery. Behind a metal shelf, carefully hidden under a pile of dusty boxes, he found a small safe. It wasn't a common safe, but a digital model that required a password. News of the safe's discovery spread rapidly, generating a new wave of apprehension among the officers. What could be inside? Secrets that could sink them all. Chief Mendez, accompanied by Helena, went to the location. A security specialist was called to open the safe. The air in the room grew even denser, each second feeling like an eternity. When the safe door finally yielded with a soft click, revealing its contents, a sepulchral silence fell upon everyone. There was no money, no jewels. Instead, there was a black-covered notebook, meticulously filled with notes, dates, and names. A black book. Beside it, a few USB drives and an old cell phone. Mendez picked up the notebook with gloves, opening it. His eyes scanned the pages, and his expression grew grave. "Judge, this is much more than we expected. These are detailed records of bribes, extortions, illegal operations, and most shockingly, names. Names of influential people, politicians, businessmen, and even members of the judiciary, all involved in a scheme of protection and money laundering. Almeida was not just a tyrant, he was a fundamental link in a much larger network. Helena approached, her eyes fixed on the notes. The coffee stain on her blouse seemed insignificant compared to the magnitude of the dirt that notebook revealed. This wasn't just the end of Almeida, it was the beginning of a war. The storm that was brewing was not just to clean the police station, but to expose and dismantle a criminal organization that infiltrated the highest spheres of power. The truth, finally, was coming to light, and its implications were terrifying. The silence of the night was broken by the sound of justice that now not only echoed but roared. Those pages, the Black Book, were not just a record of crimes. They were the exposed entrails of a sick system, a map of corruption that extended far beyond the walls of that police station. The silence that followed the revelation of its contents was heavier than any scream, laden with the gravity of a truth that threatened to collapse entire pillars of society. Chief Mendez, notebook in hand, seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. His eyes, previously focused on the task of cleaning the police station, now saw an abyss. "Chief," Helena's voice was a cold whisper, yet laden with unshakable authority. "This notebook cannot leave here. No one, absolutely no one, can access it without my express authorization. The USB drives and the old cell phone too. We need a specialized forensic team to extract all data with maximum urgency and under absolute secrecy. The lives of many people, including our own, may depend on this." Mendez nodded, his brow furrowed in concern. He already understood the dimension of what they held. "Understood, Judge. I will mobilize the most trustworthy team. Captain Silva, who is cooperating, might give us some clues about who else Almeida trusted to keep these secrets." As Mendez moved away to give the new orders, news of the safe's discovery and its contents spread like a silent virus through the police station. Officers awaiting interrogation, or who had already been heard, felt the ground beneath their feet collapse. The fear of the unknown transformed into the dread of the known. If Almeida had a black book with such powerful names, what else did he know? And more importantly, what would happen to those who were complicit, even by omission, in such a vast scheme? In the interrogation room, Captain Silva was informed of the discovery. His eyes widened. The shame that suffocated him gave way to a chilling terror. He knew Almeida didn't act alone, but the scale of the network, the mention of influential names, made him realize he had gotten involved in something much bigger than he imagined. "The Black Book," he murmured, his voice almost inaudible. He always said he had insurance, that if anything happened to him, the world would come down with him. Agent Pereira, who was interrogating him, pressed. "Captain, did you know about this notebook? Who else did Almeida trust to have access to this information?" Silva hesitated, sweat trickling down his forehead. With each revelation, the web of lies and omissions unraveled, but the truth that emerged was an even greater threat. No, not exactly the notebook, but he spoke of files. He said he had everything documented and he trusted a lawyer, Dr. Roberto Vasconcelos. He was the one who handled certain matters for him. And also a businessman, Mr. Fernando Costa. They met frequently, always in secret. Captain Silva's information, combined with what was in the notebook, began to paint a more complete picture. Mendez, upon returning to Helena, brought with him a new urgency. "Judge, Captain Silva mentioned a lawyer and a businessman, and the names I saw in the notebook. Some are prominent figures who fit that profile. We need to act with extreme caution and speed. If these individuals know we have the notebook, the situation could escalate uncontrollably. Helena observed the notebook, which was now sealed in an evidence bag, under the watchful eye of two internal affairs agents. Mendez, from now on, the investigation is no longer just about corruption in this police station. It's about dismantling a criminal organization that has infiltrated all levels of power. We need a meticulous action plan. First, the data from the USB drives and the cell phone. Second, an intelligence team to cross-reference the notebook's information with public and financial records. Third, protection for everyone involved in this operation, especially Captain Silva and anyone else who decides to cooperate. The enemy we are about to face is powerful and will not hesitate to use every means to stop us. Night advanced, but the police station did not sleep. On the contrary, it hummed with feverish, silent activity. The forensic team, hastily summoned, set up its equipment in an isolated room under the direct supervision of Helena and Mendez. Every cable connected, every light blinking, was a step towards a truth that could shake the country. Helena felt the weight of responsibility. She had come to clean up the mess of a cruel chief, but now found herself leading a much larger battle. The coffee stain on her blouse, which had once humiliated her, was now a constant reminder of the dirt she was determined to eradicate. The storm wasn't just coming, it had already arrived, and the roar of justice was about to turn into thunder that would echo throughout the country. The game had changed, and Helena's life, and the lives of all who dared to challenge the system, would never be the same. The silence in the isolated room was almost palpable, broken only by the soft hum of the forensic equipment. Every keyboard click, every light blinking on the monitors seemed amplified in the tension of that moment. Helena watched, her eyes fixed on the technicians who, gloved and masked, handled Almeida's USB drives and old cell phone. That small, previously hidden safe now revealed a universe of rot that extended far beyond the police station walls. The coffee stain on her blouse, once a symbol of humiliation, was now a constant reminder of the dirt she was determined to eradicate. The first digital scans confirmed what the Black Book had only hinted at. Encrypted files, emails exchanged with pseudonyms, deleted text messages that forensic technology recovered one by one. Each data fragment was a link, connecting Almeida to a network even more intricate than imaginable. Names repeated, now with details of dates, values, and favors. They weren't just bribes, they were ruined lives, bought judicial decisions, fraudulent bids, and even the manipulation of evidence in homicide cases. The scale of the depravity was dizzying, and Helena's indignation grew with each new revelation, transforming into cold, unshakable determination. As the team delved into the data, the outside world began to stir. News of Almeida's arrest, initially contained, began to leak to the press, distorted, incomplete, but enough to trigger an alert in circles of power. Phones began to ring in luxurious offices and government cabinets. The network, invisible until then, felt the sting. Almeida was a piece, and his fall threatened to destabilize the entire board. Chief Mendez received an enigmatic phone call, a distorted voice demanding to know what he had in his hands. The threat was veiled, but unmistakable. "Be careful, Chief. Certain truths are too dangerous to be revealed." Mendez, his expression even graver, reported the incident to Helena. "They already know we have something big, Judge," Mendez said, his voice low but laden with urgency. "They're testing the waters. We need to speed this up and ensure everyone's safety. I suggest the material be transferred to an even more secure location, perhaps to my office, under constant surveillance." Helena nodded, her eyes scanning the room, assessing each face, each movement. "No, Chief. We cannot move the material now. Any suspicious movement could be interpreted as a sign of weakness or panic. The forensic team remains here, under our direct supervision, but security needs to be reinforced. No one enters or leaves this wing without my or your express authorization. And Captain Silva, he needs immediate protection. If he's already talking, he's a target. The concern for Silva was palpable. He was the first crack in the wall of silence, and his life depended on the discretion and effectiveness of the operation. Mendez mobilized more agents he trusted, positioning them strategically throughout the police station, creating an invisible but impenetrable security perimeter. The already tense atmosphere became even denser, charged with a grim expectation. In the interrogation room, Captain Silva, now under the protection of two internal affairs agents, continued to unravel Almeida's secrets. Fear still consumed him, but the prospect of such a vast and dangerous network compelled him to speak, to seek redemption. Dr. Vasconcelos. He was the link, the brain behind many of the operations. He had access to privileged information, knew how to manipulate the system, and Mr. Costa. He was the muscle, the money. He laundered the money, bought favors, silenced victims. Silva's words, combined with the data emerging from the forensic equipment, painted a terrifying picture. The Black Book was not just a record, it was an operations manual, a guide to dismantling a criminal organization operating in the shadows, protected by its own influence. Helena, upon learning of the new information, felt a chill down her spine. The battle would not be easy, and the consequences would be profound. "Chief," Helena said, her voice a thread of steel, "we need search and seizure warrants for Dr. Roberto Vasconcelos' offices and Mr. Fernando Costa's companies with the utmost urgency, and we need a team of agents with no ties to this police station, who are absolutely clean and trustworthy. This is a high-risk operation. The enemy we are facing will not hesitate to use every means to stop us." Mendez nodded, the understanding weighing on his shoulders. He knew they were about to poke a hornet's nest of unimaginable proportions. This was not just a case of corruption. It was a declared war against organized crime, disguised as power. Dawn advanced, but for Helena, time had distorted, each second stretched by urgency and imminent danger. The orders for search and seizure warrants were dispatched with lightning speed, cutting through bureaucracy with the unquestionable authority of a federal judge. There was no room for hesitation. Almeida's network, like an octopus with invisible tentacles, already felt the sting, and every movement had to be precise, surgical. The team designated for the operations, handpicked by Chief Mendez from outside the local jurisdiction, was composed of federal police agents with impeccable records, unknown faces, and unquestionable loyalty. They prepared in a distant hangar, receiving final instructions under the cold light of floodlights, oblivious to the storm brewing at the central police station. Helena, via a secure video conference, observed their faces, seeking in them the determination she herself felt. Each was a pawn on a board that grew more dangerous by the minute. Meanwhile, in the isolated room of the police station, the hum of forensic equipment continued to draw the map of corruption. The technicians, with bloodshot eyes and absolute concentration, unraveled layers of encryption, recovering data that painted an increasingly grim picture. Emails, spreadsheets, bank statements from offshore accounts, all interconnected by an invisible thread of complicity and greed. Dr. Roberto Vasconcelos' name appeared as the architect of complex schemes, the legal brain behind money laundering operations and bid rigging. Mr. Fernando Costa, in turn, was the enforcer, the financier, the man who turned theory into reality, with tentacles extending through construction companies, security firms, and even shell foundations. The coffee stain on Helena's blouse, though faded, was still a vivid reminder of the initial humiliation, now transmuted into an emblem of her mission. That trivial dirt was just the tip of the iceberg of a much greater rot, one she was unearthing with every fiber of her being. Mendez's phone rang again, a restricted number. This time, the voice was different, graver, less veiled. "Chief, we know you're in trouble. I suggest you stop before the problems become yours." Mendez, his hand gripping the device, felt the threat materialize. "Who is this?" he asked, his voice firm. The answer was a dry laugh and an abrupt disconnection. "They're getting impatient," Mendez informed Helena, his face tense. "They're watching us, every step we take." Helena nodded, her mind already processing the implications. "It's what we expected. They won't yield without a fight, but we cannot retreat now. The truth is already revealing itself. We need irrefutable proof, so no one can suppress it." News of Almeida's arrest, previously a mere rumor, exploded in local and national media. Sensational headlines, speculations about the fall of an untouchable, and the inevitable pressure on authorities to clarify the facts. The network, in a panic, began to react. Opinion pieces questioning the investigation's integrity, anonymous complaints planted against Mendez's team, and even an attempt to discredit Judge Helena herself, with rumors about her conduct and motivations. It was a war of narratives, and they were losing ground. In the interrogation room, Captain Silva, exhausted but with a strange sense of relief, continued to pour out information. He detailed secret meetings, codes used for communication, and even a system of digital safes where Almeida kept backup copies of his most compromising files, scattered in different locations and with different accomplices. "He was always paranoid," Silva murmured, his voice hoarse. "He said that if anything happened, the truth would come out anyway, that he wouldn't fall alone." Silva's information, cross-referenced with the data emerging from the USB drives, revealed the existence of one of these digital safes in Vasconcelos's own office on a hidden server. It was the missing piece, the definitive proof that linked the lawyer not only to Almeida, but to the entire criminal web. "Chief Mendez," Helena said, her voice low but charged with cold intensity, "make sure the team going to Vasconcelos's office is aware of the possibility of a hidden server. They need to be prepared for any type of obstruction or attempt to destroy evidence, and reinforce Captain Silva's security. He is our key witness, and now, more than ever, a target." Mendez nodded, the understanding weighing on his shoulders. He knew they were about to poke a hornet's nest of unimaginable proportions. This was not just a case of corruption. It was a declared war against organized crime disguised as power. The tension in the police station was almost palpable, a heavy air of expectation and danger. Federal police agents, led by a serious-faced woman with a sharp gaze, Special Agent Camilla, raided Dr. Roberto Vasconcelos's luxurious office with Swiss clock precision. Dawn was barely breaking, but the cold morning light already revealed the chaos that would ensue. Vasconcelos, caught by surprise in his office, tried to force a cynical smile, but his eyes betrayed growing panic. "This is an outrage. You have no right," he began, but was promptly interrupted. "We have a warrant, Doctor. Vasconcelos and Judge Helena instructed us to look for a hidden server. Don't try to delay us." As the search teams scoured every corner, every false wall, every piece of furniture, Agent Camilla kept Vasconcelos under watch. He tried to compose himself, to call lawyers, but all communications were blocked. The frustration on his face was a feast for Camilla's eyes. In a corner of the room, a forensic technician from Camilla's team, following Helena's directives, noticed an anomaly in the wall behind a seemingly solid bookshelf. A hollow sound, different from the rest. With specialized tools, they revealed a secret compartment, and inside it a small server, carefully camouflaged. It was Almeida's digital safe, the Pandora's box Silva had described. At the police station, Helena received real-time updates. Camilla's voice over the radio was a mix of professionalism and contained triumph. "We found it, Judge. The server is here. It appears to be intact." A sigh of relief swept through the operations room, but Helena knew it was just the beginning. The victory was fragile. "Excellent work, Agent Camilla. Bring it immediately to the police station, and make sure Vasconcelos has absolutely no access to anything before he's brought here." Simultaneously, the operation at Fernando Costa's offices was also underway. There, the resistance was more aggressive. Armed guards tried to prevent agents from entering, resulting in a brief but intense confrontation. The federal police team, however, was superior in number and training. Costa was not present, but his offices revealed a web of false documents, inflated contracts, and records of illicit financial transactions that confirmed the extent of his participation. The money, the muscle of the organization, was being exposed. News of the server's seizure at Vasconcelos' office and the resistance at Costa's offices spread like wildfire through the criminal network. Mendez's phone wouldn't stop ringing, now with more direct and veiled threats. "You're playing with fire, Chief. People are going to get hurt." The voice was the same dry laugh, but now laden with palpable hatred. Mendez, with years of experience fighting crime, knew that the intimidation phase was giving way to retaliation. Captain Silva's security was reinforced with federal police agents, transforming his interrogation room into an improvised fortress. He, in turn, felt the weight of his revelations, but also a strange freedom. The truth, however dangerous, was a burden he no longer had to carry alone. Helena, watching the server being brought into the forensic room, felt adrenaline course through her veins. The coffee stain on her blouse, now almost invisible under the artificial light, was a silent reminder of the path that had led her there. The initial humiliation had transformed into a catalyst for justice. Vasconcelos' server was the key, the link that would connect all the loose ends, revealing the true dimension of the conspiracy. But she knew that with every step they took towards the light, the network's shadow grew denser and more dangerous. The war was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning to escalate. The roar of justice was about to become an earthquake, and Helena was ready to be its epicenter. The air in the police station's forensic room was electrifying, dense with the anticipation that preceded a storm. Vasconcelos' server, now on the stainless steel table, seemed like an ancient artifact, a portal to long-buried secrets. For Helena, it was more than a hard drive. It was the materialization of months of investigations, the missing link, the irrefutable proof she sought with every fiber of her being. The coffee stain on her blouse, though almost imperceptible, was a silent reminder of the catalyst that had propelled her to that moment, transforming humiliation into an unstoppable force. The technicians, with the precision of surgeons, began the data extraction process. Their fingers danced over keyboards, lines of code filling screens at a hypnotic pace. With each decrypted file, each opened folder, Almeida's corruption network revealed itself in its full and repugnant dimension. They weren't just names and numbers. They were stories of ruined lives, of fraudulent bids that diverted millions in public funds, of bought judicial decisions, of a system corroded from within. Then, one of the technicians let out a murmur of astonishment. "Judge, Chief, we found something. It's an encrypted file with a security level I've never seen before. It appears to be a parallel accounting system, a digital black book." Helena and Mendez approached, their eyes fixed on the screen. The Black Book was a masterpiece of dissimulation, a meticulous record of every illicit transaction, every bribe, every name involved, from minor officials to the highest echelons of power. There were payments to judges, politicians, businessmen, the dates, the amounts, the communication codes. Dr. Roberto Vasconcelos's name appeared as the financial architect, the master of accounting maneuvers who laundered money with the sophistication of an artist. And, more shockingly, Fernando Costa's name was not just that of the financier. He was the link to an international network of tax havens, the man who ensured dirty money became clean and untouchable. With each revelation, the tension in the room increased. The silence was broken only by the clicking of keyboards and the whispers of the technicians. Helena felt a chill down her spine, not from fear, but from deep indignation. That was the naked truth, the proof that would unmask the untouchables. Meanwhile, the criminal network, wounded and cornered, reacted with desperate fury. Mendes's phone, which had already become an extension of his arm, rang again. This time, the voice on the other end was not just threatening, it was a direct warning, an ultimatum. "The game is over, Chief. You and your little judge are digging your own graves. Captain Silva won't last until dawn." Mendes felt a shiver. The threat was no longer veiled. It was a death sentence. He looked at Helena, who had already understood the gravity of the situation. "They're going to try to silence Silva. He's our key witness, the voice that can validate all of this." Helena nodded, her mind working at maximum speed. "Reinforce Captain Silva's security immediately. Triple the guard. No one enters, no one leaves, except with my express authorization. And prepare a team to transfer him to a safe location as soon as we have enough from the server to ensure his legal protection." News of the seizures and the revelations from the digital Black Book leaked to the media, not due to a team oversight, but as a calculated strategy by Helena. She knew publicity was a double-edged sword, but also a shield. With public opinion on her side, it would be harder for the network to suppress the case or eliminate those involved. Headlines exploded. Corruption scandal hits apex of power. Federal judge uncovers organized crime web. Pressure on the judiciary and police was immense, but in favor of justice. In the interrogation room, Captain Silva, though exhausted, felt a mixture of fear and relief. With each passing hour, his life became more valuable to justice and more dangerous to the criminals. He knew he was a target, but the constant presence of federal police agents, now armed and wearing bulletproof vests, gave him a precarious sense of security. He had made his choice, and there was no turning back. Suddenly, the police station lights flickered, and a secondary security alarm blared in a remote area of the building. "Attempted invasion!" an agent shouted, running down the corridor. "East Wing, looks like a well-trained team." Mendes acted instinctively. "Helena, stay here with the technicians. Protect the server at all costs. I'm going there." Helena, however, was already in motion. "No, Chief. We need you here to coordinate. I'm going. No one will touch this server or any of us." She took a weapon from one of the agents and checked it with surprising familiarity. The federal judge, who had once been humiliated with spilled coffee, was now ready to face a war. Her eyes, previously full of indignation, now burned with cold, relentless determination. The battle had become personal, and she would not back down. The roar of justice was about to become a symphony of gunfire, and Helena was center stage, ready to conduct the orchestra. The secondary alarm ripped through the police station's silence like a war cry. "Attempted invasion, East Wing!" The agent's voice echoed, laden with urgency. Helena did not hesitate. Instinct, forged in years of study and a lifetime of fighting injustice, took over. The weapon in her hands, heavy and cold, was an extension of her own determination. It wasn't the first time she had held one, but it was the first time she wielded it with such visceral, personal intent. The coffee stain on her blouse, now an invisible scar, was the constant reminder of what had brought her there: humiliation, silent fury, the promise of justice. "No, Chief, we need you here to coordinate. I'm going." Her words were firm, irrefutable. Mendez, though reluctant, knew she was right. Protecting the server was the top priority, and coordinating the internal defense required his presence. Helena moved with surprising agility, her footsteps echoing down the dimly lit corridor of the East Wing. The air was heavy with tension, the smell of ozone and metal that precedes confrontation. She could hear the muffled sounds of the struggle ahead, the impact of bodies, the shouting of orders, the dry crackle of suppressed gunfire. The invaders were professionals, no doubt. They weren't thugs, but mercenaries, trained for discretion and efficiency. Their objective was clear: silence Silva, destroy the server, erase the evidence. But they hadn't counted on Judge Helena. They didn't know the cleaner they had humiliated was now the personification of the justice hunting them. She rounded a corner, weapon raised, body in a combat stance. Ahead of her, 2 federal police agents were pinned behind a pillar, exchanging fire with 3 shadowy figures who moved with terrifying fluidity. One of the invaders, tall and muscular, tried to flank the agents. Helena acted without thinking. A precise shot, and the man staggered, hit in the shoulder. His eyes widened in surprise before he fell, his weapon slipping from his fingers. The other 2 invaders turned to her, surprised by the new threat. One of them, wearing a tactical helmet covering his face, fired. The bullet ricocheted off the wall beside Helena, the sharp sound piercing the air. She ducked, rolling behind a filing cabinet, her mind processing every detail: the enemy's position, available cover, the best attack route. Adrenaline pulsed through her veins, but her mind was cold, calculating. Meanwhile, in the forensic room, Mendez felt the floor tremble beneath his feet. The sound of battle in the East Wing was a constant reminder of the situation's fragility. "Server status," he bellowed, his voice tense. The technicians worked feverishly, the data from the digital black book being mirrored and encrypted into multiple backups. With each passing minute, the criminal network lost a little more of its power, but with each minute, the danger intensified. "Chief, we found more names," a technician exclaimed, his eyes wide. "It's not just Dr. Vasconcelos and Fernando Costa. There are high-ranking politicians, military officers, even members of the judiciary and other spheres. The network is much vaster than we imagined." Mendez felt a chill. The extent of the corruption was nauseating, but this also meant that retaliation would be relentless. He grabbed the radio. "Helena, what's the situation? We need a report." Helena's voice came through, slightly breathless but firm. "1 down, 2 remaining. They're good, Chief, but not good enough." The sound of more gunfire filled the line, followed by a cry of pain. "A second one is out of commission. The last one is retreating towards Silva's cell. They want him." Mendez's heart pounded. "Damn it! Protect Silva! No one touches him!" He knew Captain Silva was the weakest link, the witness who, if eliminated, could destabilize the entire case. Silva's security had already been tripled, but the invader's determination was terrifying. Helena, now alone against the last invader, pursued him through the police station's labyrinthine corridors. The man, an agile blur, seemed to know the building's layout. He was heading straight for Silva's cell. The judge, with a mixture of fury and focus, quickened her pace. She could hear the shouts of the agents protecting Silva, the sound of a desperate struggle. The corridor leading to Silva's cell was chaos. 2 agents were on the floor, wounded. The final invader, with a silenced weapon, was about to breach the reinforced door. Silva, inside the cell, heard hell unfolding, fear chilling him to the bone. He knew he was the target, the price to pay for his redemption. Helena emerged into the corridor, weapon aimed. "Stop! Drop the weapon!" Her voice echoed, laden with authority. The invader turned, eyes behind the helmet gleaming with murderous intent. He fired, but Helena was already in motion, rolling to the side, the shot grazing the wall where she had been seconds earlier. She fired back, not to kill, but to incapacitate. The shot hit the invader's leg, who let out a grunt of pain and fell, the silenced weapon flying from his hands. Additional agents, alerted by the gunfire, rushed to the scene, subduing the wounded man. Helena approached, breathing heavily, but her eyes fixed on the invader. She bent down, pulling off the man's helmet. A young face marked by rage and desperation was revealed. He glared at her with hatred. "You won't stop us. They are many. You are just one." Helena stood up, weapon still in hand. "I am justice," she replied, her voice cold as ice. "And justice, when it finally awakens, is an earthquake that topples empires." The battle in the East Wing had ended, but the war was far from won. The server was safe. Silva was alive, but the network had shown its most brutal face. With every step they took towards the light, the organization's shadow grew denser and more dangerous. The federal judge, who had once been humiliated with spilled coffee, was now at the center of a hurricane, and she was ready to face the storm. The roar of justice had become a symphony of gunfire, and Helena, the conductor, was only just beginning to lead her orchestra. The echo of gunfire dissipated, leaving behind a heavy, almost oppressive silence. Helena, still weapon in hand, watched the wounded invader being subdued by the arriving agents. Adrenaline began to recede, leaving a trail of exhaustion, but her eyes maintained the same cold intensity. The iron mask she wore to face the battle did not falter. She knelt beside the wounded agents, quickly assessing the situation. One had a graze wound on his arm, the other a concussion, but both were conscious. Luck, for now, was on the side of justice. Mendez burst into the corridor, his face marked by concern and relief at seeing Helena standing, unharmed. His eyes swept the scene, the neutralized invaders, the agents receiving first aid. "Helena, are you all right?" he asked, his voice choked. "I am," she replied, her voice a little hoarse, but firm. "The last of them was trying to get to Silva. We managed to stop him." She pointed to the captured invader, who was now being handcuffed. "They are professionals, Chief, trained, and they were willing to do anything." Mendez nodded, the gravity of the situation weighing on him. "I saw. Captain Silva's security team barely managed to hold them off. If you hadn't arrived." He let the sentence die in the air, the scenario that could have unfolded being too terrible to contemplate. In the forensic room, news of the invasion and containment spread like wildfire. The technicians, though shaken, redoubled their efforts. With each megabyte of data extracted, the criminal network lost a piece of its armor. The digital black book was a bottomless pit of names, dates, illicit transactions, and exchanged favors. It wasn't just politicians and military personnel. There were influential businessmen, media figures, and, most disturbingly, indications of involvement from members of the judiciary itself in other districts, forming a web that stretched across the entire country. Corruption was not a localized cancer. It was a metastasis. Helena returned to the room, the tension still palpable in the air. She felt Mendez's gaze, a mixture of respect and concern. "We need to act fast, Chief. They know they failed here, but they also know we're close. The next step will be more aggressive, more calculated." "They'll try everything," Mendez agreed. "Political pressure, attacks on your reputation, perhaps even trying to delegitimize the evidence, and of course, another attempt to silence Silva." "Exactly," Helena confirmed. "Captain Silva is the key. He validates what's on the server. Without him, the defense can claim the data was forged. We need to transfer him to a maximum security location, immediately." The decision was made. A high-risk transfer operation would be planned for the next few hours. Mendez mobilized an elite federal police team, the most trustworthy men, to ensure Silva's safety. The chosen location was a secret facility, an underground federal police bunker designed to house witnesses in terrorism cases. As logistics were prepared, the media continued to explode. Headlines grew bolder, fueled by Helena's strategic leaks. Corruption network involves high-profile names. Federal judge challenges hidden power. Public opinion was in an uproar, demanding answers, demanding justice. This was Helena's sword and shield. Publicity created an outcry that the network could not ignore, but it also increased scrutiny and danger. In his cell, Captain Silva heard the commotion, the hurried footsteps, the tension in the air. He knew his life hung by a thread, that with each passing minute the price on his head increased, but he also felt a strange sense of peace. He had done his part. Justice was fighting for him, and the figure of Judge Helena, whom he had briefly seen, was the embodiment of that fight. He remembered her gaze, her unshakable determination. Hours later, under the darkness of dawn, Silva's transfer operation began. Armored vehicles were prepared, alternative escape routes mapped, and a team of elite snipers strategically positioned. Helena, though it wasn't her role, insisted on accompanying the convoy. She could leave nothing to chance. The coffee stain, now a distant but ever-present memory, was the fuel for her determination. She was not just a judge, she was a guardian. The convoy moved silently through the deserted streets of Brasilia, the city lights twinkling in the distance. Every shadow, every parked car, every suspicious movement was scrutinized. The air inside the vehicles was dense, charged with an almost palpable tension. Mendez, on the radio, coordinated the operation, his eyes fixed on the monitor showing the route in real time. Suddenly, an alert. Suspicious movement on Route 3, unidentified vehicle approaching from behind. Helena's heart pounded. They knew. The network was one step ahead, or perhaps one step behind, but always present. Accelerate. Switch to alternative Route 2, Helena ordered, her voice cutting through the silence. The drivers reacted instantly, the armored vehicles screeching on tight turns. The suspicious car, a dark SUV, tried to follow them, but the federal police convoy's agility was superior. The chase lasted minutes that felt like an eternity, until the SUV was shaken off in a labyrinth of secondary streets. Helena exhaled the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The danger was real, constant. They were playing a cat-and-mouse game with an invisible and relentless enemy. But with each frustrated attempt by the network, Helena's determination only grew. The convoy reached the bunker. Silva was led inside, exhausted but visibly relieved. The security there was impenetrable, for now he was safe. But Helena knew that Silva's safety was just one battle won. The war was far from over. The criminal network, wounded and exposed, would react with redoubled fury. They would try to destroy evidence, discredit those involved, and if necessary, eliminate anyone who stood in their way. In that moment, as dawn turned into a new day, Helena felt the weight of responsibility. She was the federal judge who had refused to be a nothing. She was the woman who had transformed humiliation into a weapon and the coffee stain into a symbol of her struggle. The network had underestimated her, and now she was ready to tear down every pillar of its corrupt empire. Justice, once awakened, would not retreat. It would advance relentlessly until the last shadow was dispelled. The offensive of the network, with its forged documents, was a low blow, but predictable. Helena was not shaken. Instead of reacting defensively, she saw an opportunity. The slander was proof of their desperation. "Mendez," she called, her voice charged with new determination. "Prepare another press conference. But this time, we won't just talk about the network. We'll talk about the truth behind these accusations against me." Mendez looked at her, apprehensive. "Judge, Exposing yourself like this could be dangerous. They might use it against you in ways we haven't foreseen. They're already using it, Helena replied, a steely glint in her eyes. The best defense is offense. We will use their own weapon against them. As Helena prepared her public counteroffensive, the forensic team in the bunker made a decisive breakthrough. The digital panic button, the network's last resort, had been decoded. The information was explosive, revealing not only the full extent of the corruption scheme, with names, dates, and amounts, but also the exact origin of the forged documents attempting to incriminate Helena. It was irrefutable proof that the network was behind the defamation campaign. "Judge, we found their digital fingerprint," the head of the forensic team announced, his voice choked with emotion. "The metadata of the fake documents points directly to a server in Switzerland, which was also linked to the digital black book. It's the same source." Helena felt a shiver. It was the missing piece. The network had dug its own grave by trying to bring her down. With the new evidence in hand, Helena called an emergency press conference. The room was packed, the anticipation palpable. Journalists, still divided and confused by the latest news, expected a retraction, perhaps a weak defense. But what they saw was a different Helena. She was not there to defend herself, but to deliver the final blow. With a giant screen behind her, Helena began to speak. First, she presented the irrefutable evidence from the digital black book, revealing the web of corruption that extended through all levels of power. Names of prominent figures, previously untouchable, were displayed, accompanied by bank statements and intercepted communications. The press room erupted in a murmur of shock and indignation. Then, with a firm and unshakable voice, she addressed the accusations against herself. "These documents," she said, pointing to the images of the forged files projected on the screen, "were created by the same criminal network we have just exposed. Our forensic experts traced their origin, and it is undeniable. It is not I who am involved in corruption, but rather those who tried to silence me with these lies." The revelation was an earthquake. The press, previously skeptical, now saw the truth with crystal clarity. The network, in its arrogance, had underestimated Helena's ability to turn every attack into an opportunity. Within hours, arrest warrants were issued. Operation Justice Awakens was launched on a large scale, with the federal police and the public prosecutor's office acting in conjunction. Dozens of politicians, businessmen and public officials were detained, their empires of corruption crumbling under the weight of the truth. The chief who had humiliated her, the one who had called her nothing, was among the first to be tried. The evidence of his abuse of authority and his connection to the network was overwhelming. He was convicted not only of abuse of power, but also of obstruction of justice and participation in a criminal scheme. His arrogance had been his ruin. Helena watched the news, her face tired, but with a deep serenity. The war was won. The coffee stain, which had once been a symbol of humiliation, was now a reminder of her strength, her resilience. She had cleaned not only the floor, but also the dirt that corroded institutions. That nothing he thought she was had become everything justice needed. The truth, however much they tried to bury it, always finds a way to the light. And Helena, the judge who refused to be silenced, ensured that light shone brighter than ever. Justice, once awakened, would not retreat. It advanced relentlessly until the last shadow was dispelled, and a new dawn, cleaner and more just, could finally emerge.